The man everyone laughed at owned the place they were standing in. The restaurant was one of those places where money wasn't just spent. It was shown off. Glass chandeliers like frozen waterfalls hung from the ceiling. White marble floors shined like they were polished with diamonds. People didn't come here to eat. They came here to be seen. And tonight, every chair was full. Expensive suits, designer dresses, watches that cost more than most people's homes. Then, the front door opened. A man stepped inside. Dark skin, simple clothes, no expensive brand logos, no fancy watch, just calm confidence. You could almost feel the energy in the room shift. Forks stopped. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is he? Is he lost? He doesn't look like he belongs here. Near the center of the restaurant was the VIP table. The kind of table where only wealth, status, and ego were allowed to sit. At that table sat a billionaire. Perfect suit, expensive tie, a man used to everyone stepping aside when he walked into a room. We saw the black man enter. His lips curled into a smirk. He leaned back in his chair, loud enough for every ear to hear. "Hey, cleaners enter from the back door." The restaurant froze. He raised his voice even more, pointing directly at him. "You're ruining the view." A few people tried to hide their laughter. Others didn't even try. Phones came out, because humiliating someone is entertainment now. The black man looked up. Not angry, not embarrassed, just still. No one could read him. He didn't shout. He didn't respond. He didn't flinch. He simply inhaled slowly, eyes scanning the room like he had seen this kind of arrogance 1,000 times before. And without a single word, he began walking forward. His shoes didn't make a sound on the marble floor. Every step felt intentional, steady, unbothered. But the whispers followed him like shadows. Why is he walking toward the reserved tables? He's going the wrong way. Someone needs to stop him. A waiter quickly rushed toward him, panicked. "Sir, the casual section is in the back. This area is reservation only." But the man kept walking. Not fast, not slow, just confident. As he passed each table, people shifted their plates protectively, as if his presence would stain their silverware. The billionaire scoffed loudly. "Did you not hear what I said? This is a private section. You don't get to just walk in like you're somebody." But the man didn't even look at him. Instead, he walked right past him, toward the one table nobody had touched. The center table, the one draped in white silk, polished silverware, crystal glasses set perfectly in a diamond pattern. And sitting on top of that table was a small sign, "Reserved VIP client." For a few seconds, the billionaire's smirk held strong. Then, confusion started to settle into his face. Why was he walking toward that table? The waiter tried again, voice shaky. "Sir, that table is reserved for someone extremely important." The black man finally stopped. He placed one hand gently on the back of the chair and spoke for the first time. His voice calm, steady, controlled. "I know." The billionaire burst into laughter. His friends joined, enjoying the show. "You know, look at you, wearing thrift store clothes and acting like you belong here." More people recorded. More people whispered. But the man didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the phones. He looked directly at the billionaire, with a calmness that made the billionaire uncomfortable. "You seem very confident in knowing what people can afford," he said softly. The billionaire leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "Trust me, I can see the difference between a customer and a cleaner." The man just smiled. Not the kind of smile people give when they're amused. The kind of smile people give when they already know how the story ends. He pulled out a folded card from his pocket and set it on the table. The waiter picked it up. His eyes widened. He checked the card again, then the reserved table sign, then back at the black man. His jaw dropped. Everyone watched as the waiter swallowed hard and whispered, "He's the VIP client." The billionaire's smirk disappeared. He stared at the card in disbelief, because printed on it, in bold letters, was the name of the person who owned the reservation. Not just for the table, but the restaurant chain. The black man pulled out the chair and sat down, gracefully, confidently, as if the entire world had just shifted around him. No anger, no ego, just quiet power. The billionaire's face turned pale. For first time tonight, he didn't know what to say. And the same room that laughed at him minutes ago, fell silent. You could almost hear the chandeliers shaking. The billionaire's jaw tightened, anger replacing the fake smile he used to impress people. He slammed his palm onto the table, rattling the crystal glasses. Get him out of here. Now. The restaurant staff froze. Even they were scared of him. The waiter, a young guy barely in his 20s, slowly walked toward the black man. His hands were trembling, eyes shifting between the billionaire and the unknown man sitting at the reserved table. He leaned in, voice shaking. Sir. I'm so sorry, but the gentleman over there said you need to leave. This section is for elite clients only. Every person within earshot gasped quietly. The billionaire leaned back in his chair with full arrogance, arms crossed. He wanted to watch the humiliation happen. He wanted everyone to see it. People watching started whispering again. Why doesn't he just leave? He should know his place. Does he not understand who he's talking to? But the black man didn't get upset. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look bothered. Instead, he looked at the waiter, not with annoyance, not with ego, but with empathy. The waiter wasn't the enemy. He was just a young man trying not to lose his job. The black man spoke softly. You don't have to apologize for following orders. The waiter blinked, confused. Most people yell when they're embarrassed. Most people defend themselves. But this man stayed calm. That only made the billionaire angrier. He slammed his chair back and stood up, pointing across the room. Do I need to repeat myself? Remove him. I spend more in this place in one night than he makes in a year. A couple at a nearby table turned away, uncomfortable. Someone whispered, This is getting ugly. Another person was already recording, not because they cared, but because drama is entertainment. The billionaire took a step closer, towering over the black man, spitting every word like venom. You are not one of us. This table, this section, is for people who matter. Silence. You could feel the air tighten. Every pair of eyes locked on the black man, waiting for him to snap, waiting for him to yell, waiting for him to be angry. But he didn't. He reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately, and placed something on the table. A card. Metal. Heavy. It hit the table with a sharp metallic clink. Not plastic. Not a debit card. Not a regular credit card. A VVIP Founder's Access card. The billionaire stopped mid-step. He recognized the sound before he saw the card. Metal cards only belong to one category of people. Owners. Founders. Investors. The waiter stared at it, eyes widening, breath catching in his throat. His entire expression changed. He picked up the card carefully, like it was made of diamonds. Stamped on the front were two words. Founder's Access. Not VIP. Not executive. Founder. Meaning, the man didn't need permission to sit here. He gave permission. The billionaire laughed, forced, nervous, trying to recover control. A metal card? Anyone with money can get one of those. That doesn't mean. The waiter flipped the card over, and nearly dropped it, because engraved on the back was the restaurant's corporate signature, not just indicating membership, but ownership. The waiter opened his mouth, voice barely a whisper. Sir, this card is only issued to founders. The billionaire froze. People at nearby tables leaned closer, trying to catch what he said. The waiter continued, louder this time. This card means he isn't just any VIP client. He's one of the top investors. He funded this entire restaurant chain. A ripple of gasps spread through the room. Chairs shifted. Phones lowered. Someone whispered, He owns this place. The billionaire's smirk collapsed. He took a step back. Then another. Because suddenly, the man he tried to embarrass was the one person in the room who had the power to remove him. But the black man didn't stand up. He didn't brag. He didn't gloat. He simply took the card back and slid it into his pocket. Then, calmly, he looked up at the waiter. You're doing your job, and you're doing it well. The waiter swallowed hard, eyes glassy. Nobody had ever spoken to him like that here. Not with respect. Not with kindness. The billionaire could no longer hide his panic. He stammered, How did you get that card? Who even are you? The black man leaned back in his chair, relaxed, composed. His voice never rose. His tone never shifted. He looked directly at the billionaire and said, "Your problem isn't that you don't know who I am. It's that you think you know what I'm worth." The billionaire went silent. People felt that line. It hit harder than yelling ever could. The waiter stood up straight and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man has full access to any table, any time. He doesn't need permission." Everyone looked at him differently now. Respect replacing judgment. Silence replacing laughter. And the billionaire, a man used to controlling every room he entered, was suddenly the one without power. He had misjudged the one person he should have never underestimated. The billionaire reached for the metal card slowly, as if touching it might burn him. He picked it up with shaky fingers, the same fingers that had been pointing and ordering the waiter around minutes earlier. He expected to see a company logo. He expected a membership tier. He expected anything that confirmed what he already believed, that the man sitting in front of him was beneath him. But the moment his eyes landed on the engraved lettering, his confident smirk vanished. The name on the card wasn't random. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't decorative. It was the man's full legal name, laser-etched into the metal with a signature embossed under it, a signature that the billionaire had seen countless times on internal documents and investor lists. His voice broke. This can't be right." He tried to laugh, but nothing came out. It sounded like his throat had closed. He flipped the card over again, desperately searching for proof that this was fake, that this was staged, that someone was playing a cruel joke on him. But the more he looked, the more real it became. There was a serial number, a security stamp, a holographic signature seal. There was even a microchip, something only the highest-level investors receive. Suddenly, the billionaire began to sweat, not because the room was warm, but because he realized he had insulted someone who didn't just belong here, someone who owned the place. He turned toward the waiter, clinging to the last piece of his arrogance. This is probably a mistake. Some barcode error. Anyone could get a fake card printed." He didn't finish the sentence, because at that exact moment, the restaurant manager spotted the card from across the room. His eyes widened. He sprinted, not walked, to the table. He wasn't running toward the billionaire. He was running toward the black man. He nearly tripped over his own feet getting there. "Sir," he gasped, we weren't informed you were arriving early tonight. I deeply apologize for the lack of preparation. If we had known, your private dining room would already be set up." The billionaire looked at the manager, confused. Why was he apologizing? Why was he panicking? The manager continued, voice trembling with respect. "He's not staff. He's not a customer. He stopped as if he needed air. Then he said the words loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "He's the founder of this restaurant chain." The billionaire froze completely. He stared at the manager, waiting for him to say founder level or major investor or premium member. But the manager wasn't done. "This building exists because of him." The words hit the billionaire like a punch to the chest. Every conversation in the restaurant stopped. Forks hovered midair. Drinks stopped halfway to lips. Someone whispered, "He owns this." Another voice. No wonder he didn't react. A woman put her hand over her mouth, realizing she had laughed at the billionaire's insult earlier. The billionaire slowly sank into his seat, disbelief turning into something much worse. Humiliation. He wasn't used to feeling small. He wasn't used to being wrong. He wasn't used to the spotlight turning against him. But now, everyone in the restaurant was staring at him. Not with admiration. Not with envy. With disappointment. Like they had finally seen who he really was. The black man didn't move. He stayed sitting, calm and composed, as if he'd seen this happen 1,000 times. The manager kept speaking, voice low. "Sir, we're honored to have you. Everything in this space was built under your vision. You are the reason this business exists." The billionaire blinked rapidly, trying to process what he just heard. This was the man he mocked for his simple clothes. The man he assumed was nobody. The man he tried to kick out. The billionaire choked out, I didn't know who you were." The black man finally lifted his gaze, eyes steady, voice calm. "That was the point." The billionaire stammered, "If I had known, I didn't realize." "You don't have to realize who someone is," the black man interrupted. "You only have to realize how to treat people." The billionaire's throat tightened. He had spent years chasing respect through money. And in one silent moment, the man he underestimated earned more respect without saying a single word. The manager straightened up and addressed the black man. "Sir, your private room is ready at any time. And we will remind the staff, no one speaks to you like that again." The black man looked at him and spoke gently. "No. Remind them that no one should speak to anyone like that." That sentence hit harder than the truth of ownership. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about status. It was about humanity. People shifted in their chairs, ashamed of the laughter from earlier. Some avoided eye contact completely. The billionaire felt like the walls were closing in. His voice cracked. "Why didn't you say anything earlier? Why didn't you tell me?" The black man leaned forward and spoke in a tone quiet enough for the billionaire to hear, but heavy enough for it to echo. "When you have power, you don't need to announce it." The billionaire felt that. He wrapped his fingers around the edge of the table, grounding himself as his world began to collapse. He had mistaken simplicity for weakness. He had mistaken humility for insignificance. And now he sat face to face with a man who didn't need wealth to feel powerful. Because real power doesn't have to prove itself. The black man leaned slightly forward, just enough to draw the billionaire's attention, but not in a threatening way. His movements were deliberate, calm, precise, every gesture measured. The room seemed to hold his breath. Even the low hum of conversation in the background disappeared, leaving only the weight of his presence in the air. He spoke softly at first, almost conversationally, but every word carried the kind of authority money could never buy. "You judged me by what I wore," he said. His voice didn't rise. It didn't tremble. It was steady even, like a river flowing quietly, but with undeniable force. "You saw my clothes. You saw the simplicity of my jacket. You saw what you thought was a lack of wealth. And you assumed you could dismiss me. That I didn't belong here." The billionaire's face flickered between disbelief and discomfort. He had spent years believing that power could be measured in suits, in watches, in the subtle arrangement of a table setting. He had assumed that confidence, loud voices, and domination were the only things that mattered. And in that moment, he realized he had been fundamentally wrong. The man sitting across from him radiated authority in a way that no amount of money could purchase. The black man slowly rose from the chair, his posture upright, shoulders squared, movements deliberate yet effortless. He didn't rush. There was no need. The room seemed to adjust to his pace, almost subconsciously giving him space, recognizing the quiet gravity in his motion. His hands reached for the buttons of his coat, and as he fastened each one, it was as if each click resonated in the silence, a subtle yet undeniable announcement of control. Every observer, guest, staff, even the billionaire himself, felt the impact without a single raised voice or shouted command. "While sitting in something I built," he continued, voice steady, calm, unwavering. Those words hung in the air like a physical presence, a revelation. He didn't need to elaborate further. The weight of ownership, vision, and achievement spoke for itself. Everyone in the room understood. This wasn't about arrogance. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't even about the billionaire's power. It was about truth, integrity, and the undeniable fact that the black man had created something that mattered. Something permanent. Something real. The billionaire's eyes widened. His smirk had long since faded, replaced by the faint tremor of panic he hadn't experienced in years. He had faced competitors, investors, critics, and even enemies, but never someone he had underestimated so completely, someone who had existed in plain sight and quietly surpassed his own perception of power. And now, as the truth sank in, he realized the magnitude of his misjudgment. The ego he had relied upon, the arrogance that had shielded him for years, shattered like fine glass against the reality of what this man represented. The black man paused, letting the silence do its work. Silence has a power words often cannot match. Each person present felt the shift. Guests who had been smugly observing from their tables now looked away, ashamed of the laughter that had erupted at the man's expense minutes earlier. Staff who had been nervous and hesitant now exhaled, relieved that the tension had resolved, but in a way far beyond what they could have expected. Even the billionaire's closest companions felt a cold, uncomfortable realization seep into their consciousness. They had watched someone truly powerful and had failed to recognize it. He adjusted his coat fully, standing with a calm dignity that demanded acknowledgement. The light from the chandeliers seemed to catch on the fabric, glinting subtly as if highlighting not wealth, but presence. Every eye in the room was drawn to him. Every ear tuned in to the resonance of his words. And yet, he spoke no more than he needed to. There was no boasting, no shouting, no attempt to humiliate. The power came from the quiet truth of his existence. "You judged me by what I wore," he repeated, softer this time, almost like a whisper that carried to every corner of the room. "You saw the exterior, and assumed the interior was empty. You measured me by your shallow standards. And in doing so, you revealed more about yourself than about me." The billionaire could barely look up. His hands twitched on the table. He wanted to argue, to assert control, to reclaim even a fraction of the authority he had lost in those seconds, but the words wouldn't come. The weight of truth pressed down on him, heavier than any threat or insult he had ever wielded. He felt exposed, small, completely outmaneuvered without a single aggressive action from the black man. The black man took a deliberate step back, letting the space between them breathe. He wasn't leaving yet, but the move subtly reminded everyone that he could leave any time he chose. Ownership isn't just about possession, it's about freedom. And in that freedom, he had complete control over the room. The billionaire had none. A few whispers began to circulate among the guests. People were piecing together what had just occurred. Some nodded subtly to themselves, recognizing the lesson. Judgment based on appearances is foolish. Power is not always loud. Status is not always visible. Real authority doesn't need a shout. It's felt, respected, and acknowledged in silence. The black man finally straightened, taking one last glance at the billionaire. His eyes were calm, unwavering, and filled with quiet satisfaction, not malice. The billionaire's ego, once so inflated and untouchable, had been dismantled by nothing more than presence, poise, and truth. The lesson was delivered without violence, without spectacle, yet it would linger far longer than any argument or outburst ever could. And then, almost imperceptibly, the black man moved, preparing to leave. The room exhaled collectively. Not relief, exactly, but a profound understanding that what they had witnessed wasn't just a confrontation, it was a revelation. He had turned insult into opportunity. He had taken judgment and converted it into recognition. He had reminded everyone present that appearances are deceptive, that assumptions are dangerous, and that true power is silent yet undeniable. The billionaire slumped slightly in his chair, pale and speechless. He had learned a lesson that money could never buy. He had been humiliated not through force, but through quiet truth. And in that room, everyone knew it. The black man, calm, composed, and dignified, buttoned his coat fully, straightened his shoulders, and prepared to leave. The room had changed. The energy had shifted. The arrogance of the few had been tempered by the quiet power of one. And in that simple act, standing tall, owning his space, letting truth speak for itself, he had delivered a lesson that would echo far longer than the laughter that once tried to diminish him. The black man rose from his chair with deliberate calm. Every movement was purposeful, measured, almost ceremonious, as if the room itself had slowed to accommodate him. He adjusted the sleeves of his jacket and brushed imaginary dust from his shoulders, though there was none. Each motion was precise, controlled, conveying a quiet authority that no money could ever purchase. The billionaire, still seated, watched him with wide eyes, a man used to having command in every room, now rendered powerless by the presence of someone he had underestimated so completely. As he walked past the table, the black man's gaze didn't waver. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to turn back to assert dominance. His very steps carried weight. Each one echoed softly against the marble floor, but the sound seemed to resonate deeper than any voice, louder than any yell. The room had fallen into a hush so complete that you could hear the subtle intake of breath from every stunned observer. He leaned just slightly toward the billionaire, not in menace, but in a way that suggested inevitability. And he whispered a low, calm murmur that could only be heard by the one it was meant for. "Respect is free, but arrogance, that'll cost you everything." The words were simple, concise, and devastating. Not a single syllable wasted. The billionaire's face turned pale, his jaw tightening, as the weight of those words sank in. The silence in the room was almost tangible, heavy with the collective recognition of what had just transpired. Everyone realized, even if only subconsciously, that true power does not announce itself with wealth, titles, or bluster. It is quiet, undeniable, and earned through vision, integrity, and unshakable self-possession. The black man walked past, slow and deliberate, as if marking the floor with every step. The room followed him with their eyes, not in awe, not in fear, but in respect. People who had been laughing just moments ago now felt the sting of their judgment. Some hid their faces in shame, others whispered apologies to themselves for ever underestimating someone who appeared ordinary. He reached the doorway, the sunlight streaming through the glass panels behind him, casting a bright, white glow that framed his silhouette like a halo of quiet triumph. The light caught on the edges of his coat, on the slight glint of the card he had used to claim his rightful place, and on the confident set of his shoulders. He paused for just a heartbeat, looked over the room one last time, and nodded ever so slightly, an acknowledgement not of victory over the billionaire, but of the truth having been recognized. Then, without another word, he stepped out. The door closed softly behind him, but the silence lingered. The staff, the guests, the billionaire, everyone remained frozen, processing what had just happened. It wasn't just that a man had walked into a room and claimed what was rightfully his. It was that he had done it with dignity, with restraint, and with a clarity of purpose that left no room for argument. The lesson was unmistakable. Respect is not demanded, it is earned, and arrogance is a currency that always comes with a price. For a long moment, no one moved. Forks hovered midair. Drinks remained unraised. Eyes darted around, trying to understand how such an ordinary-looking man could command such absolute control. It was a realization that would linger in their minds far longer than the laughter that had filled the room before. The silence was complete, heavy with the understanding that something extraordinary had just unfolded before them, a masterclass in poise, authority, and the power of presence. And then, slowly, the world began to resume. People whispered. Waiters exhaled. The billionaire slumped slightly in his seat, a mixture of shame and awe etched across his face. He had been humbled not by confrontation, not by shouting, but by quiet truth. And everyone in that room would carry that lesson with them, long after the man had left. As the black man walked away from the restaurant, stepping into the bright daylight, the contrast was clear. He had entered simply, unassumingly, and he had left victorious, not through force, not through arrogance, but through quiet confidence and unwavering dignity. The light caught him perfectly, white and bright, highlighting his calm, composed expression. It was a visual declaration. He had taken his rightful place, and nothing could shake that. And now, if you want to see more stories like this, stories of resilience, power, and people quietly conquering the world, make sure to subscribe. Hit that like button if you felt the weight of this moment. Leave a comment telling us what you would have done in the billionaire's shoes. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a viral, inspiring short that challenges what you think you know about power, respect, and success. Because in every story, there's always a lesson. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding all the cards.